You can support In the Past Lane by buying some of our merchandise, like shirts, hoodies, mugs, and stickers. Just go to our website, inthepastlane.com. Thanks.
Whoa, hit the brakes. You've arrived at the #1 drive-by for American history. Welcome to The Pit Stop. Brought to you by In the Past Lane, the podcast about history and why it matters. Here's Edward T. O'Donnell, your host and historian at large.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Pit Stop, your Monday morning source for history on the go in just about 5 minutes. We offer this feature every Monday, in addition to our full feature episodes, where I interview historians about their latest books. Here's what happened in American history the week of January 28th, 2019. Let's start with birthdays. January 29th, 1843, that's the birthday of the 25th President of the United States, William McKinley, who was born in Niles, Ohio. William McKinley was the last president to serve in the Civil War. Following the war, he practiced law until winning election to Congress in 1876. 15 years later, he was elected governor of Ohio, and then, in 1896, President of the United States. When he ran for re-election in 1900, he chose the hero of the recently concluded Spanish-American War, Theodore Roosevelt, as his vice president. TR would take over as president in 1901 after McKinley was assassinated. January 30th, 1882, another president of the United States and another Roosevelt was born. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was born January 30th, 1882 in Hyde Park, New York. Roosevelt was elected in 1932 during an economic collapse that came to be known as the Great Depression. Conventional wisdom said that the only way to deal with the Depression was to ride it out, like bad weather or a bout of the flu. But FDR rejected this advice because he was unwilling to let Americans starve for lack of income. So he launched the New Deal, which included a vast array of jobs programs. FDR also saw in the crisis of the Depression an opportunity to create permanent institutions like Social Security that would benefit Americans long into the future. Franklin Roosevelt once said, "True individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence." January 30th, 1909, writer and social justice activist Saul Alinsky was born in Chicago, Illinois. After graduating college, Alinsky got involved in the labor movement. But by the late 1930s, he had embarked on what he later called community organizing. His goal was to help the poor and marginalized know their rights, and to exercise their political power to improve their communities. Alinsky's work soon became a model for progressive activists across the country. He eventually published Rules for Radicals, a book many consider a Bible of sorts for social activism. Saul Alinsky once said, "The price of democracy is the ongoing pursuit of the common good by all the people." January 31st, 1919, 100 years ago this week, Hall of Fame baseball player Jackie Robinson was born in Cairo, Georgia. Robinson made history in 1947, when he became the first African American in the modern era to play Major League Baseball. Jackie Robinson once said, "There's not an American in this country free until every one of us is free." And February 1st, 1902, poet, novelist, and social activist Langston Hughes was born in Joplin, Missouri. Langston Hughes was one of the leading figures in the 1920s and 1930s cultural flourishing known as the Harlem Renaissance. Okay, what about events? The last week of January features 3 notable events connected to the Space Shuttle program. January 28th, 1986, Space Shuttle Challenger exploded shortly after liftoff, killing all aboard, including teacher Krista McAuliffe. February 1st, 2003, Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated upon re-entry, killing all aboard. February 3rd, 1994, Space Shuttle Discovery took off, and for the first time it was piloted by a woman, Lieutenant Colonel Eileen Collins. January 30th, 1968, North Vietnamese forces, known as the Viet Cong, launched surprise attacks all across South Vietnam, blowing up buildings, assassinating leaders, and causing widespread chaos and fear. Known as the Tet Offensive, it was eventually defeated by U.S. and South Vietnamese forces. But its initial successes convinced the American public that, contrary to positive statements from the Johnson administration, the war was not coming to an end. And if you want to learn more about the Vietnam War and the Tet Offensive, check out In the Past Lane, episode 39, where I speak to Ken Burns about his documentary about the Vietnam War. February 1st, 1960, African-American college students at North Carolina A&T in Greensboro, North Carolina, staged a sit-in at a local Woolworth lunch counter reserved for whites only. They were met with violence by local whites who rejected this challenge to white supremacy and segregation, and many of them ended up in jail. This was not the first sit-in, but it generated enormous media coverage across the country, and led many civil rights activists in other cities to employ the same tactic. February 2nd, 1913, the 16th Amendment to the Constitution was declared ratified. This amendment empowered Congress to levy an income tax. Okay, it's time for the last word. Let's give it to Langston Hughes, who was born 117 years ago this week. Here's a passage from one of his best-known poems, Let America Be America. He wrote it in the 1930s, in the midst of the Great Depression. It's both a lament that America has failed to live up to its lofty ideals of liberty and equality, especially for African Americans, but it's also an expression of optimism that it one day would. Oh, let America be America again, the land that has never been yet, and yet must be the land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Okay, people, that's your history fix for the week. Now put it in drive and go make your own history.